15,000 Enron employees watched their retirement accounts go to zero. Not down 50%, not a bad year, zero. The 401k plan held $2.1 billion in assets. Nearly two-thirds of it was Enron stock. When the company filed for bankruptcy on December 2, 2001, the stock lost 94% of its value. Employees were locked out of their accounts for a month. They could not sell, they could not transfer, they could not do anything except watch. One administrative assistant named Deborah Perota lost $40,000 in retirement savings. The CEO, Kenneth Lay, made $20.7 million in the first 7 months of that same year by exercising stock options. He told employees on September 26, 2001, that the stock at $27 a share was, quote, an incredible bargain, end quote. 2 weeks later, the company took a $1 billion write-down. The stock hit 61 cents. That is an S-tier retirement mistake, the kind that doesn't just hurt, the kind that ends the whole plan. And it is far more common than you think. A worker who invested since 1980, contributing 10% of average wages entirely into Enron stock, lost 94 cents of every dollar she put in. Had she invested the same amount in a simple, diversified portfolio of 50% bonds and 50% index funds, she would have gained an additional $1.56 for every dollar contributed. Same discipline, same consistency, opposite outcome. And I'm going to rank every major financial mistake that has destroyed retirement for millions of Americans, from the ones that are completely catastrophic and unrecoverable, all the way down to the ones where, honestly, you will be all right. I have organized them into 5 tiers. S tier means your retirement is gone. D tier means you overspent, but you will recover. And what sits in between will surprise you, because some of the mistakes you think are harmless are actually doing far more damage than you realize. My name is Ben. I've spent the last 4 weeks going through the exposed Enron Senate hearing transcripts, the Vanguard How America Saves report from 2025, the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, and about 200 pages of FINRA enforcement actions against financial advisors. What I found is a clear ranking. Not every retirement mistake is equal. Some cost you 5 years of retirement. Some cost you your entire retirement. And the difference between the two comes down to one thing: whether the mistake compounds against you over time or whether it is a one-time hit you can absorb. I call this the Retirement Damage Multiplier. A mistake that costs you $10,000 at age 30 costs you $174,000 at age 65 because you lost the compounding on that money for 35 years at 7% average annual return. A mistake that costs you $10,000 at age 55 costs you about $19,000 at retirement. Same dollar amount, completely different damage. Every mistake I'm about to rank is evaluated by this multiplier. How much does it actually cost you by the time you need the money? That is the only question that matters. Let us start at the top, S tier. These are the mistakes that end retirements. There is no recovering from these in most cases. If you recognize yourself in any of these 4, stop everything else you are doing and fix it now. S-tier mistake number 1, cashing out your 401k early during a job change. This is the single most common catastrophic retirement mistake in America, and nobody talks about it with the urgency it deserves. According to Vanguard, 42% of hourly workers cash out their 401k when they switch jobs. Not roll it over, not leave it, cash it out. Here is what actually happens when you do that. You withdraw $30,000 from your 401k at age 35. The IRS hits you with a 10% early withdrawal penalty. That's $3,000 gone immediately. Then the entire $30,000 is taxed as ordinary income. If you were in the 22% federal bracket plus a 5% state tax, that's another $8,100. Total tax and penalty hit, $11,100. You walk away with $18,900 from your $30,000. But that is not the real cost. The real cost is what that $30,000 would have become. At 7% annual return over 30 years, that $30,000 would have grown to $228,367. You did not lose $30,000. You lost $228,000. For what? A car? A credit card payoff? A kitchen renovation that you could have financed at 4%. S-tier mistake number 2, trusting a financial advisor who churned your account. Churning is when an advisor buys and sells investments in your account not because it benefits you, but because every transaction generates a commission for them. FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, sanctioned over 400 brokers in 2024 alone for violations including churning, excessive trading, and unsuitable recommendations. The average restitution order in FINRA enforcement cases involving seniors exceeded $200,000. Here is a real pattern I found in the enforcement records. A retired teacher in Ohio had $420,000 in her retirement account. Her advisor made over 200 trades in a single year, generating $47,000 in commissions. The account lost 19% of its value in 12 months. The advisor kept his commissions. The teacher lost $80,000 she will never get back because she does not have 30 years of compounding ahead of her. She has maybe 15. The difference between a fiduciary and a broker is not academic. It is the difference between retiring and not retiring. S-tier mistake number 3, co-signing for adult children's debt. I know this one is going to be controversial, but the data is brutal. According to a 2024 bank rate survey, 73% of co-signers ended up paying some or all of the debt themselves. The average amount parents co-signed for was between $20,000 and $50,000. When that loan defaults and the parent is 60 years old, there is no compounding window to recover it. I have seen cases in the FINRA and consumer finance records where parents refinanced their homes, drained retirement accounts, and took on credit card debt at 22% interest to cover obligations they co-signed for. One case involved a 63-year-old postal worker in Michigan who co-signed for his son's $42,000 truck loan. The son lost his job 8 months later. The father's credit score dropped from 760 to 580. He couldn't refinance his own mortgage. He pulled $38,000 from his 401k to cover the payments, triggering a 10% penalty plus income taxes. Net cost by retirement, over $100,000 from one signature. S-tier mistake number 4, not diversifying out of company stock. This is the Enron problem I opened with. But Enron was not an isolated case. Employees at Nortel Networks, Lucent Technologies, WorldCom, and Global Crossing lost billions collectively when those companies collapsed. Even General Electric, one of the most respected companies in American history, saw its stock fall from $60 in 2000 to $6 by 2018, an 89% decline over 18 years. Every employee who had their retirement concentrated in GE stock during that period watched it evaporate slowly. The Pension Protection Act of 2006 now allows workers to sell employer stock in their 401k after 3 years, but many employees still voluntarily concentrate over 50% of their retirement in a single stock because they believe in the company. Belief is not diversification. Enron employees believed too.
Now let us move to A tier. These mistakes cause severe damage to your retirement. They do not necessarily destroy it completely, but they take years off your timeline and force you to work longer than you planned. A-tier mistake number 1, taking an adjustable rate mortgage before the 2008 crash. Millions of Americans took ARMs in the early 2000s with low teaser rates of 2 to 3%. When those rates reset in 2007 and 2008, monthly payments jumped 40 to 60%. I came across a case study from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston that described a couple in their late 50s in Nevada who took an ARM in 2005 on a $380,000 home. Their initial payment was $1,400 a month. When the rate adjusted in 2008, it jumped to $2,200. They could not refinance because the home was now worth $210,000, $70,000 less than they owed. They spent their entire emergency fund and then started withdrawing from their retirement accounts to make payments. By 2010, they had drained $62,000 from their 401k, paid the penalties and taxes, and still lost the house to foreclosure. According to the Federal Reserve, 3.8 million foreclosures were filed in 2010 alone. People did not just lose their homes, they lost the equity they had built over years, and many had been using that equity as their primary retirement asset. The median home price fell from $257,000 to $172,000, a 33% decline. If your house was your retirement plan and it lost a third of its value while your mortgage payment doubled, you were trapped. A-tier mistake number 2, rating home equity like an ATM. Between 2003 and 2007, Americans extracted over $2 trillion in home equity through HELOCs and cash-out refinances. They used the money for vacations, cars, home theaters, and college tuition. When home values crashed, they owed more than their homes were worth. The Federal Reserve's Z1 Flow of Funds report shows that household net worth declined by $13 trillion between the third quarter of 2007 and the first quarter of 2009. $13 trillion. Much of that was home equity that people had already spent. A-tier mistake number 3, ignoring inflation's effect on a safe bond portfolio. This is the quiet killer that nobody sees coming. If you retired in 2020 with $1 million in bonds yielding 2%, your annual income was $20,000. By 2024, inflation had eroded that purchasing power by roughly 18% cumulatively. Your $20,000 bought like $16,400. Meanwhile, someone who kept 30% of their portfolio in equities saw their total portfolio grow enough to offset the inflation loss. The point is not that bonds are bad. The point is that a 100% bond portfolio slowly starves you. A-tier mistake number 4, retiring too early without calculating healthcare costs. The average 65-year-old couple retiring in 2024 will spend approximately $315,000 on healthcare throughout retirement, according to Fidelity's annual estimate. That number goes up every single year. In 2002, the same estimate was $160,000. It has nearly doubled in just over 20 years. If you retire at 60 and do not qualify for Medicare until 65, you need to privately insure yourself for 5 years. That can cost $15,000 to $25,000 per year, depending on your state and health status. And those are premiums alone, not including deductibles, copays, and prescriptions. I have seen cases where people retired at 58 with what they thought was enough money, only to discover that $125,000 of it would go to health care before Medicare even kicked in. One woman I read about in a Fidelity case study retired at 59 with $800,000, which felt like plenty. She did not factor in that her COBRA coverage from her employer would expire after 18 months, leaving her with 3.5 years of marketplace insurance at $21,000 per year. By the time she turned 65, she had spent nearly $90,000 on health insurance alone. That's 11% of her entire retirement savings gone before she even started drawing down for living expenses.
Now B tier. These are costly mistakes, but they are recoverable if you catch them in time. B tier. Overpaying for whole life insurance when term was enough. A 30-year-old male pays roughly $500 per year for a $1 million 30-year term policy. The equivalent whole life policy costs approximately $8,000 to $12,000 per year. If you invested the difference of $10,000 annually at 7% for 30 years, you would have approximately $944,000. Instead, you have a whole life policy with a cash value that typically underperforms the market. This does not mean whole life is always wrong, but for 90% of people, term plus investing the difference wins. B tier. Not doing Roth conversions in low-income years. If you have a year where your taxable income drops, maybe between jobs, maybe in early retirement before Social Security kicks in, that is the year to convert traditional IRA funds to a Roth. You pay taxes at a lower rate now and never pay taxes on that money again. Most people miss this window entirely because nobody tells them it exists. Here is a concrete example. A woman retires at 62 and does not claim Social Security until 67. For those 5 years, her taxable income is minimal, maybe just some dividend and interest income. She is sitting in the 10 or 12% bracket. If she converts $50,000 from traditional to Roth in that year, she pays about $6,000 in taxes. That $50,000 then grows completely tax-free. If it doubles to $100,000 over the next 15 years, she pays 0 additional taxes on the growth. If she had left it in the traditional IRA, she would owe $22,000 to $24,000 in taxes when she withdraws it later at a higher bracket. The maths is simple. Pay $6,000 now or $24,000 later. Most people pay $24,000 because they never knew the window was open. B tier. Keeping too much cash in savings earning nothing. The average American savings account earns 0.4% interest. Inflation runs 3 to 4%. That means your cash loses roughly 3% of its purchasing power every year. $100,000 in cash earning 0.4% for 10 years gives you about $104,000 in nominal terms. Adjusted for 3% inflation, that money buys what $77,000 bought when you deposited it. You lost 23% of your money by doing nothing. A high-yield savings account or short-term treasuries would have preserved it. B tier, paying full sticker on cars for 30 years. The average American buys 13 cars in a lifetime. The average markup on a new car is about $3,000 over dealer invoice. Over 13 cars, that is $39,000 in pure overpayment, not counting the lost compounding. If you invested that difference instead, it would be worth well over $100,000 by retirement. Negotiate every single car. It is the easiest money you will ever save. C tier. These are common mistakes. They cost you money, but they are manageable with a little effort. Not shopping around for Medicare supplements. The annual premium difference between the cheapest and most expensive Plan G Medigap policy in the same zip code can be over $2,000 for the identical coverage. Every year you overpay is $2,000 gone. Over 20 years of retirement, that is $40,000 for the exact same benefits. Overpaying property taxes without appealing. Roughly 60% of homeowners who appeal their property tax assessment get a reduction. The average reduction saves $300 to $400 per year. Over 20 years, that is $6,000 to $8,000 that most people leave on the table because they do not know they can appeal. Subscription creep. The average American spends over $219 per month on subscriptions, according to a C+R research survey from 2024. That is $2,628 a year. Not all of it is waste, but most people have at least $50 to $80 per month they have forgotten about. Over 30 years at 7% return, $80 per month becomes roughly $97,000. Not taking the employer match on your 401k for years. If your employer matches 3% of your salary and you earn $60,000, that is $1,800 per year in free money you are leaving on the table. Over 10 years at 7% return, that is about $25,000. It is literally the highest guaranteed return in finance, and millions of Americans do not take it. D tier. You made a mistake, but honestly, you will be all right. Buying too much house. Yes, you overspent, but real estate appreciates. If you bought a $400,000 house when you could afford $300,000, you are cash flow stressed, but your net worth is still growing. The median U.S. home has appreciated 270% since 1990, according to the Case-Shiller Index. You overpaid, and you are still richer than the person who rented and invested nothing. Spending too much on grandkids. If it brings your family joy, it is not a financial catastrophe. The average grandparent spends about $2,400 per year on their grandchildren, according to AARP. That is real money, but it is not retirement-ending money. Just set a budget and stick to it. Holding on to a timeshare too long. The average timeshare purchase price is $24,140. The average resale value is between $1,500 and $2,000. That is a 92% loss. But it is a fixed, known loss. You are not compounding the damage. Sell it, take the hit, stop paying the average $1,120 in annual maintenance fees, and move on. The mistake is not buying the timeshare. The mistake is keeping it. Now, here is the pattern that connects everything I just ranked. Every S-tier and A-tier mistake shares one trait: the damage compounds. Cashing out a 401k at 35 does not cost you $30,000. It costs you $228,000 because you lost the compounding. Getting churned by a bad advisor does not cost you $47,000 in commissions. It costs you your entire retirement because you lost both the money and the time to recover it. Co-signing a loan at 60 does not cost you $42,000. It costs you your credit, your ability to refinance, and the retirement savings you raid to cover the payments. Every D-tier mistake, on the other hand, is a fixed cost. You overpaid for the house, but it appreciated. You spoiled the grandkids, but you can set a limit. You held a timeshare, but you can sell it tomorrow. The question you need to ask yourself about any financial decision is this: does the damage compound or is it a one-time hit? If it compounds, it is potentially catastrophic, regardless of the dollar amount. If it is a one-time hit, it is recoverable, regardless of how bad it feels in the moment. The single biggest thing you can do right now, if you are watching this and you are under 50, roll over your 401k when you change jobs. Do not cash it out. Call your new employer's plan administrator or open a rollover IRA at Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab. It takes one phone call, and it could be the difference between $228,000 at retirement and zero. If you are over 50, verify that your financial advisor is a fiduciary. Ask them one question: are you legally required to act in my best interest at all times? If they hesitate, if they say they follow a suitability standard, if they redirect the question, that's your answer. A fiduciary says yes immediately because it is the law they operate under. A broker operating on commission cannot say yes because it is not their legal obligation. That one question could save you your retirement. If you are any age, never put more than 10% of your retirement in any single stock, including and especially your employer's stock. Enron's 15,000 employees would tell you the same thing if they could. So would the employees at Nortel, WorldCom, Lucent, and the thousands of GE retirees who watched their stock fall 89% over 18 years. The Vanguard How America Saves report sits on their website for free. It is updated annually. It tells you exactly what the average person is doing with their retirement and where the gaps are. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, updated every 3 years, shows you how wealth is actually distributed and where people are falling behind. Most people never read either of these. Now, you know about them. Most of these mistakes are not made by stupid people. They are made by busy people who trusted the wrong person, signed the wrong document, or simply never learned how compounding works in reverse. The maths does not care about your intentions. It only cares about time and rate of return. This is Ben. Stay sharp out there.